I'm here to put into context some research that we're very pleased to be doing for NAYT at the moment, and I'm putting this talk under the title of Having an Excellent Time, because it's, for me, a useful reminder of some key features of the youth theatre movement. You know, that it is a time. That's what Tom's talked about. He talked about the preciousness of having that time when he was a young boy to be not in his home, not in his school, but somewhere different. You know, and it's that shared experiencing, isn't it? It's that coming together and how important that time is, which really matters. And for young people, seeing that as an excellent time, you know, in the sense of socially it is an excellent time. So it kind of reminds me as a researcher looking at excellence that excellent can mean a lot of different things for youth theatre members and for youth theatre practitioners, and that in our research we have to try and capture the fullness of that and not get pushed into particular understandings or particular definitions, and not get pushed into definitions of excellence which don't match up to young people's own experience of and value of youth theatre. So it's there kind of to remind me a little bit as well. I've got to do these. There's too much text on these. I put them up, you know, to help me. If anybody wants these slides afterwards, I'm happy to let you have them. So, our brief is to answer that question. How do we recognise and value excellence in youth theatre for the full range of participants? And for those of us who take an interest in cultural policy, a question like that moves us straight into A&E, Tom. And that's a kind of duality in that phrase as well, because, you know, the kind of hospital and rushing and crisis and injury and blood everywhere is, you know, a kind of useful picture of what happens when we begin to talk about access and excellence. And it's a kind of government mantra that we can do these two things. We can widen access to standards of excellence. So in looking at the brief, what's underneath the question are the two kind of the two strands, if you like, to our research brief. And I've highlighted certain words because those words are, if you like, the kind of fault lines in what has become known as the cultural sector. You know, if you look at artistic standards, it raises all kinds of questions about whose artistic standards, whose tastes, whose preferences, whose judgments, whose right to impose them, whose right to authorise your work as being excellent or being of artistic standards or not. And in a free-spirited movement like the youth theatre movement, it's very important that those standards obviously come from within. They may be benchmarked against what we know in the bigger world, but they need to come from within, because it's only in that way that you will live with the spirit of the movement, it seems to me. And process and product famously represent a fault line between those who think that the taking part in any kind of artistic activity is more important than the value of what is produced. And one of my kind of interesting realisations talking to youth theatre members is that in a profound sense, for the youth theatre members I've talked to, there is no such thing as product, actually. You know, there is only an ongoing process. If anything, there's a fear that if there is something called a product, a performance, there might be nothing that follows that. You know, what will be next? What will come next? So for youth theatre, profoundly, it's, you know, the play, the performance, the event, the festival are only staging posts in that excellent time, which they want to continue. So it's, you know, it's a very kind of processual judgment about standard and excellence that we're looking for, I think. And then also those words underrepresentation and access, which are very on the lips of government at the moment. You know, and what it is an awareness of what we all know, is that there are many different populations, many different groups who are not represented in cultural activity. And that there are real blocks to access for many young people, and part of what we're here today to talk about is how we remove some of those. But what you should know is, from somebody who's looked at the cultural sector and different kinds of arts activity for young people, is that actually the youth theatre movement is extraordinarily well represented. In terms of ethnic involvement, disability and other underrepresented populations, you know, you have far more young people from a broader and wider and more diverse spectrum, if you like, than you'll find in some other areas of cultural activity. So it's not about being complacent, but it's certainly about letting government know that if you're talking about how do we get to harder reach populations in your new cultural offer, then come talk to NAYT, because, you know, we've done some very good work in that area. So you start off, I think, you know, not wanting to push that further, but certainly having got further ahead than some other people have done. I wanted also just to put this little reminder up for us early on as well, and it's one that I've been thinking about a little bit. It's a quote about the arts from Jeanette Winterson. I'll read it out for you. Art makes us better because it offers an alternative value system. Even the making of it is an affront to capitalism. You can't ship it to Hong Kong to get it done cheaper. You can't put it on growth hormones or make it under lab conditions. You can't give it a deadline, cost it, predict it, or bank on it. But if you believe that life has an inside as well as an outside, then art is what you need. Art works on the inside against the 24/7 emergency zone we call life. And I put it up for two reasons. I put it up because most of my life is spent working in the formal education sector, where of course teachers of drama, teachers of dance, teachers of music are expected to bank on it, predict it, measure it, give it levels of achievement. There's a real kind of constraining influences on the kind of artwork that young people can do in schools, which again is why I celebrate the youth theatre movement as offering young people something which is free of all of that and is outside all of that. But I also put this quote up because it seems important in terms of research, but also in terms of NAYT's journey at the moment, where government is moving in on cultural activity and what young people do in their spare time, their free time. That it's very important that you have that, what I maybe romantically imagine as being always that kind of free spirit in the youth theatre movement. A subversion, a use of youth theatre to give young people an alternative value system and the means of critically exploring and performing their worlds. And I think that is core to NAYT's mission. Tom's usefully told you this next slide, which is Brian McMaster's report for the Arts Council, which has been generally celebrated, across the professional arts sector as well as, amongst what is, as I said, become known as the cultural sector. And it is interesting now, this recognition that, that the arts do have this ability to get to the root of living. And that if you are denied access to the arts for whatever reason, then that leaves you with a space in your heart, if you like, waiting to be filled. And that the arts have that capacity to do that. And you'll know that what the McMaster's report does is to urge government to take seriously the idea that it is vital for young people to be given the chance to experience culture within and outside school, and that this experience is excellent. Cultural organisations must be proactive in meeting the extra demand for their work that the cultural offer will generate. So on the one hand, again, there's that, we must get more people involved, but what we must get them involved in is something which is excellent. And we come back to this difficult term and what this difficult term might mean. And there's an admission from government as well that when we talk about the word excellence, we can't help but have shadows which are to do with the sense that standards of excellence are connected to historic and elitist undertones. And James Purnell, bless him, who went straight off to pensions as soon as he made this statement. He's an ex-RADA boy. We had great hopes for him. It's all right, Andy Burnham went to RADA as well, so we're okay. There is this constant, there is this idea in New Labour that you can have both these things. And the fact is, you can't have access to existing standards of excellence. Because existing standards of excellence are, by definition, exclusive. Because some things are excellent and some things are not. And if your notion of excellence is based, as it is in ballet, for instance, upon a particular body shape, and a sense that only certain bodies can produce excellent dance, then you're denying access to excellence for anybody whose body shape doesn't conform with that.